Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What started as a lighthearted chat on the Kelly Clarkson Show turned into one of the most talked about clashes in daytime television. Country superstar Miranda Lambert came on to discuss her new album. But when the conversation shifted to whether country music has sold its soul to pop influences, sparks flew. Kelly Clarkson, with her trademark smile and sharp wit, defended the idea that country music is evolving and reaching more people than ever before. But Miranda Lambert wasn't having it. With her fiery Texas grit, she snapped back that country was being watered down, sold out, and stripped of its roots. The tension grew so thick, the studio audience could feel it. What began as playful banter spiraled into a raw, emotional debate about tradition, authenticity, and respect for the fans who built the genre. And in the end, the unthinkable happened. Miranda Lambert stood up, slammed her microphone down, and stormed off the set, leaving Kelly Clarkson stunned, the audience gasping, and social media exploding. This was more than a debate about music. It was about values, legacy, and who gets to define the soul of a genre that millions call home.
The lights of the Kelly Clarkson Show beamed across a studio packed with fans, buzzing with excitement. Kelly Clarkson, America's sweetheart with her signature charm and wit, welcomed her guest with open arms. "Y'all, please give it up for my friend and one of the most badass women in country music, Miranda Lambert." The audience erupted into cheers, whistles, and applause as Miranda Lambert walked on stage, her cowboy boots clicking with purpose. She wore a denim jacket embroidered with roses, her blonde hair falling naturally as she waved warmly to the crowd. Kelly jumped up to hug her, and the two women embraced like old friends. "I'm so glad you're here," Kelly said, grinning ear to ear. "Every time you walk into a room, it just feels a little more country." Miranda laughed. "Well, I try to bring a little bit of Texas everywhere I go." The crowd cheered again, and the conversation began lighthearted. Kelly asked Miranda about her latest album, her tour life, and the joy of balancing her music with time spent at home on her ranch. Miranda responded with ease, her southern drawl carrying warmth. "You know, there's nothing better than writing songs on the porch with a guitar, looking out over the land. That's when country music feels real to me, when it comes straight from the heart." Kelly nodded, leaning forward in her chair. "I love that because, as a songwriter myself, I know what you mean. Music has to come from an honest place, right?" The two women laughed together, swapping stories of late-night writing sessions and the funny chaos of tour life. The audience soaked it in, clapping after nearly every exchange. But then, the conversation subtly shifted. Kelly, ever the curious host, steered toward the broader state of country music. "You know, Miranda, I have to ask," she began, smiling as she adjusted in her chair. "There's been a lot of talk about how country music has been changing. You've got artists mixing in pop, R&B, even hip-hop sounds. Do you think that's a good thing? I personally love that it's reaching more people." The room hushed slightly. Miranda's expression softened, but her eyes held something more guarded. She crossed one leg over the other and gave a half smile. "Well," she said slowly, "I think it depends. I'm proud of country music reaching new fans, but sometimes I feel like we're losing touch with what made this genre special in the first place. Country is supposed to be about storytelling, about honesty, heartbreak, grit. When everything starts sounding like pop, you kind of wonder, where's the soul?" A ripple went through the audience. Kelly chuckled lightly, trying to keep things upbeat. "Oh, I get that. But I mean, isn't evolution a good thing? Like, every genre has to grow or it risks fading out. I kind of feel like country's in its golden age right now." Miranda smiled politely, but the energy between them shifted ever so slightly. "Sure," she said, her voice cool but steady, "but growth shouldn't mean losing your roots. There's a difference between evolution and selling out."
The audience reacted. Some clapped, others gasped softly at the weight of her words. Kelly tilted her head, her brows lifting as though she hadn't expected Miranda to go there so quickly. Trying to ease the moment, she leaned back with a laugh. "Well, I think we're both going to have some strong opinions about this." Miranda left too, though hers carried a sharper edge. "Oh, no doubt about that." The tension was still mild, hidden beneath polite smiles and laughter, but it was there, lingering like a storm cloud on a sunny day. What began as two friends sharing laughs was beginning to turn into something deeper, something personal. The audience could feel it, and they leaned forward in their seats, sensing that what they were about to witness wasn't just another cheerful celebrity interview. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about what country music stood for, and whether its soul was slipping away. The atmosphere in the studio shifted almost imperceptibly, like a breeze turning into the hint of a storm. Kelly leaned forward, her elbows resting on the arm of her chair, her eyes lighting up with conviction. "See, I hear you, Miranda," Kelly said, her voice measured but firm. "But I think about when I was a kid growing up in Texas. I was listening to Reba, Dolly, Garth. They were icons, but they also pushed boundaries in their own ways. Reba brought in big stage production. Garth flirted with rock. Dolly crossed over into pop decades ago. And yet, nobody accused them of selling out." The audience clapped enthusiastically, cheering Kelly on. She raised a hand in appreciation, but quickly turned back to Miranda. "So I guess my question is, why is it different now? Why do we treat today's artists like they're betraying the genre, when really they're just doing what's always been done, trying to grow it?" Miranda shifted in her seat, her jaw tightening slightly. She brushed her hair back from her face and met Kelly's gaze head-on. "It's not the same, Kelly," she said, her voice steady but with a new sharpness. "Back then, even when artists brought in new sounds, the heart of the song was still pure country. Dolly could sing over a pop arrangement, but the story she told, the pain, the grit, the hope, that was country through and through. What I hear now," she paused, glancing briefly toward the audience, "what I hear now sounds like bubblegum. It's love songs that could just as easily be on a top 40 pop station with a banjo thrown in at the last second to make it country. That's not authenticity. That's marketing." The audience murmured, a mix of agreement and discomfort. Kelly straightened up, her warm smile fading into something more serious. "But Miranda, don't you think authenticity looks different for different people? I mean, you and I both write songs from our hearts. You pull from your life in Texas, your ranch, your marriage, your heartbreak. But a 22-year-old writing about their first crush or partying on a Friday night, isn't that their truth? Why should their version of country be dismissed just because it doesn't look like yours?" Miranda let out a short laugh, not cruel, but undeniably pointed. "Because when it all starts sounding like the same generic party anthem, it stops being about truth. It becomes a formula. And country music is supposed to cut deeper than that. It's not about how many trucks you can squeeze into a lyric or how catchy you can make a hook. It's about telling a story that feels real." The crowd reacted with a mix of applause and audible gasps. Kelly tilted her head, her voice taking on an edge of her own. "Okay, but Miranda, isn't that a little harsh? I mean, if people are connecting with it, if millions of fans are buying those records and singing those songs, doesn't that say something? Maybe the genre isn't being watered down. Maybe it's just being democratized. Maybe it's bigger than just one definition of real." Miranda's eyes narrowed slightly, her lips curving into a tight smile. "Or maybe," she countered, "the industry is spoon-feeding audiences what they think will sell, instead of challenging them with songs that actually mean something. And forgive me if I'd rather fight for the soul of this genre than just sit back and clap because the charts look good." The room erupted in applause and gasps. Kelly let out a deep breath, visibly trying to keep her composure. She smiled at Miranda, though the tension was unmistakable. "You know, Miranda, Kelly said, her voice carrying a mix of frustration and affection. "I love you, but sometimes you sound like a gatekeeper, like you get to decide what counts and what doesn't. And that worries me, because the beauty of music is that it belongs to everyone." The words landed heavy. Miranda's smile faltered for just a moment, then hardened. She leaned in, her tone quiet but cutting. "And sometimes, Kelly, the danger of being too open is that you forget where you came from." The audience gasped audibly at the line, and even Kelly seemed taken aback. The women stared at each other for a beat, their friendly smiles gone, replaced by a fragile tension teetering on the edge of confrontation. The warmth of the show's opening was a distant memory. What had started as a polite discussion was escalating into something raw, something charged with not just professional disagreement, but personal philosophy. The studio audience knew it. This wasn't just a talk show anymore. It was turning into a cultural reckoning, right there, under the bright lights. The air in the studio felt heavy now, as if the bright set lights were spotlighting not just two stars, but two competing visions of country music itself. Kelly leaned back in her chair, her smile gone, her voice measured with intent. "Kelly, I get it," she said, her tone softer now, but tinged with frustration. "I know you care about the heart of this genre, but I think sometimes when you talk about real country, it feels like you're dismissing people like me and others who came from outside the Nashville mold. I grew up on country too, but I also grew up on pop and rock. When I sing something that blends those influences, it doesn't mean I've lost my roots, it means I'm honoring all of them." The audience applauded lightly, sensing Kelly was opening up. She went on, her voice rising with conviction. "And let me be personal for a second," Kelly continued, leaning forward. "When I went through my divorce, when I was hurting and trying to keep it together for my kids, do you know what I turned to? Country music. Songs that didn't fit neatly in a box. Songs that let me scream, cry, and still find joy. I poured my story into my music, and yeah, it didn't sound like a fiddle and steel traditional track, but it was my truth. And my fans, people who've been through the same pain, told me it was theirs too. Are you saying that doesn't count? That it's not country enough?" The crowd clapped louder now, moved by Kelly's vulnerability. Her voice trembled for just a second, enough to show that this wasn't just a debate for her, it was personal. Miranda, however, didn't soften. She crossed her arms and shook her head slowly. "Kelly, I'm not saying your pain doesn't count. I respect you, and I respect what you've been through. But the genre can't be everything to everyone. If we stretch it so far that any song about heartbreak or love gets to be called country, then what makes country special anymore? We'll lose the sound, the roots, the grit. It'll all just blend into pop radio until there's no difference." Kelly's eyes glistened, her face tightening. "But Miranda, don't you see? Country is already about universality. It's about telling the truth, whether you're on a ranch in Texas or stuck in a high-rise in New York. If we put walls around it, we're shutting people out who need it most." Miranda leaned forward, her voice sharper now, cutting through the room like a blade. "Or maybe we're protecting it, because not everyone gets to walk into this house and redecorate it just because they like the furniture. Some of us have been building this home brick by brick with our blood and tears, and we're not just going to hand over the keys to anybody who wants to slap a country label on their pop record." The audience gasped, a ripple of shock and awe moving through the room. Miranda's lips parted in disbelief at the metaphor. For a moment, the two women just stared at each other, Kelly's eyes wet with emotion, Miranda's burning with defiance. Kelly finally spoke, her voice lower, but with a raw edge. "You know, Miranda, I think that's the problem. You act like this genre belongs to a chosen few, like it's some guarded fortress. But country music saved my life when I was just a girl in Burleson, Texas. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. And now, when I share my own story through it, it's told it's not real enough. That hurts. That feels like erasing me. And erasing millions of fans who feel the same way." The studio fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Even Miranda hesitated, her expression flickering between defensiveness and something softer, almost regretful, before she hardened again. "Kelly," Miranda said, her voice cold but steady, "it's not about erasing you. It's about protecting a tradition that's older and bigger than any one of us. And if you can't see that, maybe you're the one who's forgetting where this music came from." The line landed like a punch. A visible shiver ran through the crowd. Some clapped, others gasped, some booed softly. Kelly pressed her lips together, holding back words she clearly wanted to unleash. Her hand gripped the armrest tightly, her knuckles pale. The emotional dam had broken. This was no longer a debate about country versus pop. It was about identity, belonging, and the soul of music itself, and both women were bleeding raw truth in full view of a live audience. The clash wasn't just professional anymore. It was deeply, achingly personal. The tension in the studio had reached a boiling point. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether they were watching daytime television or the unraveling of a long-buried feud. Kelly Clarkson leaned back, her chest rising and falling as she steadied herself. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was calm, carrying the weight of someone who had fought her battles in private and was now forced to fight one on stage. "Miranda," she said, almost pleading, "this genre isn't just yours. It isn't just mine. It's all of ours. It belongs to the fans who cling to those songs when they've got nothing else. You don't get to be the gatekeeper of pain or love or joy. That's not what country music is about. It's about letting people in, not shutting them out." The crowd erupted into cheers, clapping and whistling as Kelly's words struck home. For a moment, it felt like the balance had shifted, the audience leaning fully into her corner. Miranda's jaw clenched. She leaned forward, fire flashing in her eyes. "See, that's where you've got it wrong, Kelly. It's not about being a gatekeeper. It's about respect. Respect for the history, respect for the sound, respect for the people who built this genre before either of us could even hold a microphone. You talk about letting everyone in, but if we let everyone in without boundaries, then we lose the foundation that makes country, country." Kelly tilted her head, her voice cutting sharper now. "So what, Miranda? You get to decide who's authentic and who's not? You get to stand there and say to me and to every artist who doesn't sound exactly like you that our music doesn't matter? Because that's how it feels." The crowd oohed, sensing the sting in her words. Miranda sat back in her chair, shaking her head. "I'm not saying your music doesn't matter, Kelly. I'm saying the label of country matters. And if we're not careful, we'll wake up one day and the genre will be unrecognizable. And then what? Then it all gets swallowed by pop, and country loses its soul." Kelly leaned in, her hand pressing against her chest, her voice breaking slightly. "And I'm saying maybe the soul of country isn't in the instruments. Maybe it's in the stories. Maybe it's in the people who've lived those stories and sing them from the gut, whether it's over a banjo or a drum machine. That's what connects. That's what saves lives. And that's what fans hold on to when the world is falling apart." The audience exploded into applause, some even standing. Kelly's face was flushed, her voice carrying the raw power of lived experience. Miranda, however, had had enough. She stood abruptly, the scrape of her chair against the floor echoing like a thunderclap. Gasps filled the air as she straightened, her eyes flashing with both fury and hurt. "You know what?" Miranda said, her voice sharp and unyielding. "If this is what country's gonna be, if it's just a free-for-all where anyone can slap the label on anything they want, then maybe I don't want to sit here and pretend we're all on the same page. Because we're not. And I'm not going to water down my truth just to make everyone comfortable." The crowd murmured, half cheering, half booing. Kelly blinked in shock, her mouth parting as she tried to speak, but Miranda cut her off with a firm shake of her head. I've spent my whole life fighting for this music, and I'm not going to sit here and let people tell me that protecting its roots is somehow wrong. I love this genre too much to just smile and nod. So you know what? I'm done." With that, Miranda pulled off her microphone and let it drop onto the chair with a thud that echoed across the silent set. Gasps filled the air as she turned and began striding toward the edge of the stage. "Miranda, wait!" Kelly called after her, her voice both pained and desperate. But Miranda didn't turn around. The cameras caught it all, her heels clicking across the stage floor, the stunned faces in the audience, Kelly sitting frozen in her chair with tears pooling in her eyes. The tension had snapped, and the clash had spiraled into something unforgettable, a live walk-off that would be replayed on every entertainment news outlet by nightfall. The audience was split, half erupting in shocked applause, the other half whispering in disbelief. Some cheered Miranda's fiery stand for tradition. Others leaned into Kelly's heartfelt plea for inclusivity. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just a daytime TV spat. It was a cultural moment, a breaking point in a long, simmering debate about the soul of country music. And as Miranda Lambert stormed off stage, the echo of her exit left the set and the audience shaken to its core. The studio sat in stunned silence for several beats after Miranda Lambert's exit. Kelly Clarkson, still perched in her chair, stared down at the microphone lying on Miranda's seat as though it symbolized more than a walk-off. It felt like a fracture in country music itself. She took a deep breath, forcing a smile for the audience. "Well, y'all just witnessed something real," Kelly said softly, her voice quivering. "And sometimes real hurts." The crowd, unsure whether to clap or stay quiet, settled on a gentle wave of applause. Kelly's vulnerability held them in place. The cameras cut to commercial, but the story was already bigger than the show. Within hours, clips of the heated exchange flooded social media. On TikTok, users split into factions. Hashtag Team Miranda praised her for defending the roots of country, while hashtag Team Kelly lauded her heartfelt defense of inclusivity. One viral tweet read, "Miranda Lambert just walked off the Kelly Clarkson Show live on air. This wasn't just a fight about music, this was a fight about identity, about who gets to belong." And honestly, both sides hit hard. Cable news picked up the story the next morning. Fox News framed Miranda as a traditionalist, standing her ground against a pop-country invasion. Meanwhile, Entertainment Tonight highlighted Kelly's emotional plea as a sign that country music was evolving, and her willingness to open the door for new voices. Miranda, for her part, released a short statement through her team later that night. It was firm, unapologetic. "I walked off because I refused to compromise my truth. Country music deserves to be protected. I will never apologize for fighting for its roots." Her fans rallied around her, calling her the last true guardian of the genre. Comment threads overflowed with words like respect, integrity, and fighter. To them, her walk-off wasn't weakness. It was defiance, a line drawn in the sand. Yet critics accused her of arrogance, of being unwilling to share the stage with a fellow artist who had her own valid perspective. For many, her exit became symbolic of the old guard's resistance to change. Kelly, meanwhile, handled it with characteristic grace. On Instagram Live the next evening, she addressed fans directly. Her tone was calm but emotional, her eyes still heavy from the confrontation. "I didn't want it to go there," she admitted, "but I won't back down from what I believe either. Country music is about people's lives, their struggles, their hopes, and to me, those stories can live in many sounds, whether it's twang and fiddle or pop-infused melodies. At the end of the day, it's about connection." The comment section exploded with heart emojis, affirmations, and countless messages of support. Fans praised her for staying in her chair, for not storming off, even when the conversation cut deep. Behind the scenes, Nashville insiders were buzzing. Some saw Miranda's exit as a publicity nightmare, a move that risked alienating collaborators who straddled genres. Others felt it only reinforced her reputation as a fearless purist, unafraid to burn bridges in the name of authenticity. Younger artists, many of whom grew up idolizing both women, found themselves torn. Casey Musgrave tweeted, "The soul of country is big enough for all of us. Roots matter, so do stories. Maybe we should be less worried about who's in or out and more about what connects." It was a diplomatic middle ground, but one that resonated with fans exhausted by the polarization. Weeks later, the clip of Miranda storming off the Kelly Clarkson Show had racked up tens of millions of views. Podcasts dissected the fight, op-eds debated whether country was in a golden age of diversity or on the brink of losing its foundation. For Kelly, the moment became a symbol of her willingness to stand up for inclusivity and vulnerability in music. For Miranda, it cemented her place as an uncompromising traditionalist, unwilling to bend even for the sake of television diplomacy. The walk-off, dramatic as it was, did something unexpected. It reignited a national conversation about country music's identity. Fans debated more passionately than ever. Younger listeners discovered old records, while traditional fans re-examined modern hits. It was messy, raw, and emotional, but it made people care. In the months that followed, both women carried on with their careers, but the shadow of that moment lingered. When people spoke about Miranda Lambert and Kelly Clarkson, they didn't just mention their songs. They mentioned that day, that clash, that walk-off. It was no longer just about two women on a stage. It was about a genre caught between past and future, and the millions of hearts beating in the middle. And maybe, just maybe, that fiery moment ensured country music wouldn't be ignored, watered down, or forgotten. Because the soul of country, bruised and debated as it was, had never felt so alive.